Oh, we should be live? Okay.
Great.
Great. We're sitting here talking.
Sitting here talking mierda. Oh, you're on
That
live.
was earlier.
You're on live. Yeah,
Well,
that's a.
some of the gossip.
That
Oh my
was
gosh.
great.
That was
That
great.
was.
G. That was great.
That's an
G.
episode of its own gossip.
That was G on the spot.
G-rated?
Yep. We can hear it. The mics are hot. Mics are hot.
So he's gonna just let us know when we can start. We're on.
We're on.
All right.
We're on. Yay!
Yay.
Thank you, sir.
The reason we're excited, not only because it's our first podcast, but it took like 10 hours to get this show going.
Yeah, it sure did.
Some technical
Like
difficulties.
a lot of technical difficulties.
Just for the record, I got here on time.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Yes, you did. You were a Latino on time.
Finally, about time
About time.
for Latinos to be on time. Who are we? What is this going on? What's going on here?
Everybody. I am Stephanie Garza with Latinos in the House. You got Pablo Punk Out Gonzalez from DJ to DJ. And of course, you know his style is spinning. All new wave, every new wave.
All wave,
waves.
all wave, baby,
waves.
all wave.
And today, we've got a special guest, Steve Spinnin Santoyo. Once we figure out how to do this entire audience and this little thingy, we'll be all right. We'll be ready to set to go.
Yep.
So we're here to showcase Latino DJs in the industry. Not only DJs, but dancers. All those in the arts, in the dance entertainment field.
Yes.
Right.
And Steve, we thought about you because you, my brother, have been in this business since 1980.
Yes.
That's a long ass time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
No, you tell us about it. How did you
Yeah.
start?
Well, first of all, I want to say how I really got interested was Mr. Joe Rodriguez, and this was in the 70s. Joe, I grew up around Wells High School, Ashland and Augusta on Walton. Joe was the neighborhood DJ. Now I'm talking about when I'm like 10 years old. So
So, Joe, he just gave out your age.
Joe was doing all the neighborhood parties. So my neighbors always had parties that lived next door to me. And of course, you know, I didn't see Joe play because I was a kid. I couldn't, you know, but I would look out my window and I would see the party going on out of my dining room window. And I heard the music and I could see everybody dancing and hear the music. And of course, you know, Joe, whatever he was mixing on or playing on, of course, there was no 1200.
Let me interrupt you. Joe who?
Joe Rodriguez.
Oh.
Joe Cool
Joe Cool.
Rodriguez.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that part. My bad.
Yeah.
Ni malo.
So he actually was the first kind of influence that I said. Like I said, I was probably like 10 years old, 11 years old, and I'm looking, and he was doing all the neighborhood parties. But then shortly after that, well, a couple of years later, some of my friends that were mixed, they started mixing in the neighborhood. And I started watching them, and they started having parties. I believe Joe kind of, I think he was having a baby or something at that time, so he kind of got out of not got out of the business, but he kind of shied away. And so a bunch of my other friends started mixing. That was Disco Johnny Soto, Vince Vasquez. There was a bunch of them. Carlos, Hito, Oscar, Miss Mystery was mixing with Johnny at that time.
This is all early 80s or late
This
70s?
is 1980,
Okay.
around that time. And then I saw them playing at parties, and that's when I got interested. I saw Disco Johnny, actually, Johnny Soto mix at a party, a house party. And I said, man, that's cool. I want to do that. So they're like, hey, I'm sorry. So then they said, hey, we all practice at Vince's house. So come on over. And so, but there was like 7, 8 of those guys. They were all mixing, practicing, and I at that time I had a DJ part. Well, we started practicing together, and we would go over to Vince's house and maybe get a little bit of time on the turntables. Back then they had actually 1700s, Technique 1700s, and I was like,
For those of you
okay.
who don't know what that is, am I right? It's turntables?
Turntables,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's the round things, the round disc little
Yeah,
things.
they move around like this, right?
Yeah, big round disc things.
So they, invited us. My friend was Lewis. His name was Lewis, and we would go to their house and kind of practice a little bit because there were so many of them. We didn't get much time, and you gotta. We're just learning, so
Yeah.
we're like, hey, match the beats, da 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 da, and then we would go back and forth whenever they had time for us, and then we're like, hey, man. We really want to do this. We got to get our own stuff. There's too many of them guys. They're all doing their thing. So finally, we ended up getting our own turntables. My dad actually bought me. They weren't 1200s, but because I said I'm going to sell my radio, I'm going to sell this, and to get equipment and stuff. So we ended up getting a set of turntables. Hitachi, I don't know what they were, but direct drive, $60 turntables.
The best.
And these guys had an old mixer that they sold us for $50, like a Gemini mixer or something. So we had that, and then they would borrow us some records, and we would start mixing in the house, practicing.
What music were you playing at that time?
Oh my goodness!
Because you're saying that you started like in 1980, right?
So
Yeah.
What were you mixing?
They had I don't know. It was just
Was it disco or?
yeah, disco. Here's the well, we could get into that later, but yeah, it was a lot of disco stuff, different kind of music. They were all into. The thing is, they all had bought they were buying records. They all had bought different types of music, and we would just kind of take what we can just to practice and stuff, but. So it was yeah, it was just the beginning. We kind of
Did you guys have a group name?
no, we didn't. Lewis and I were just kind of like I said, we were just learning, so we just kind of took it for what it was, and then kept practicing. Eventually, we bought a lot of the crates of records because they all split up. And then we bought a bunch of records from them and started getting more into the whole mixing. We got a little bit better. And it was funny because, 83, we met Juan Tovar. Juan Tovar went to school with my sister.
Oh.
And they were they're 5 years older than me. And he was at the house one day, and my sister said, "Hey, my brother and his friend are DJs," and he was going to Columbia College at the time, and that's when they said they wanted to try to do a mix show,
And
start a trial of a mix show
And
to
where?
see how it was going to at CRX,
CRX,
at Columbia
Columbia
College.
College. Okay.
Yeah.
My
Oh.
alma mater.
So, yeah,
Yeah, it's my
What's
alma
the
mater.
mascot for Columbia College?
it is the best.
We are the mascots.
Okay. so now you're getting
So
a
that-
mix show ready at CRX.
So we handed in. We did demo tapes on cassettes, handed them in, and they liked it. They liked the mixes, and then they said, "Okay, we're going to start the show. You guys do, hand in a mix."
So you weren't even a
mix."
student, and you were supplying the mixes.
That was
That's
a big issue later.
that's kick ass, though. I mean,
That was-
right? Think about it.
None of
You
the
were-
DJs that were on
High
the
school
air
kids.
back then were not didn't go to Columbia, and that it became an issue later. But that's
That's another show.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
gonna be that's definitely gonna be another show.
But there was really because Columbia really didn't teach DJ. They were teaching on the air personality
Yeah.
DJs.
Okay.
So that was the issue. That's why we got away with it because it was like we're mixed DJs. We're not on the air personality DJs. So they allowed us to continue, you know, doing the show, doing
The mix
the
show.
mix show.
Well, that's how I remember you. I remember you as CRX.
And that started in '83.
Yeah.
And then they started asking us for more mixes, and it was only Lewis and I. And I mean, you know, we didn't have many records, and we're like digging through, you know, so many crates to try to come up with mixes every week and something's, you know, fresh. And it was just too hard to, you know, we're like they wanted more, do an hour, do 2 hours each every week, and we're like.
I got homework to do.
So then we kind of said, hey, you know, you guys got to bring in some more people, you know,
Okay.
bring
Yeah.
in some more DJs, and that's how really the whole CRX thing got started. And they brought in more DJs, and then that's when the whole thing started blowing up, you know. on
So were you
CRX.
running the whole thing at the time, like when the DJs were starting to come in for these mix shows? Were you like spearheading the whole thing?
No. It was the Jim Mitchum and all the CRX heads. Jim was he was the main one who actually got the show going. So they did all that. We just handed in our mixes, and they reviewed them and they played them. Make sure, you know, of course you can't have swear words,
Right.
and all that stuff. You know.
Because I know back in, well, I started Columbia College in '88. Yeah, I just dated myself. Thanks. But I know going there and trying to get up to the CRX radio station was almost like going through Fort Knox, because they had gotten such a popularity
Yeah.
over the years that people were wanting to find a way to be on the air. I remember Harry the Blade, who was a good friend of mine at the time when I went to college there. I mean, he would get me in there once in a while because it, like, hey, you got to make a phone call. The security guard was there. They let you up. It was almost kind of like going through Clear Channel and all these other bigger radio stations at the time. So I know there was a lot of people who came out of there. But I mean, talking to Tom Joyce recently, I mean, your name stands out for everybody at Columbia College, especially those who were a part of that radio station and even beyond. Your name resonates and everybody knows who you are. So, I mean, big props to you on that.
Well, thank you. Well, we kind of were the first ones, you know. I mean, it was really them who put us on, so that was cool. But then it kind of took on, and one of the things that happened was my partner ended up leaving, so he was only on the air for like 2 years, and then he left. He had to go out of town and left. He moved to Puerto Rico, and so then that left me, you know. And then I think that's what resonated with everybody, because then I was, you know, oh, he started the mix show here, you know.
Yeah, it makes sense. You were CRX for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, your name is.
And then everybody else, you know, came in, and it was funny because for a long time none of us knew each other, because everybody was, at that time it was just handing in cassettes, so everybody would come in on different days and hand in their mixes, you know, to the radio station, and I didn't even know any of the mixers, you know, because they would come on
Right.
different days, and you know,
Right.
my day was Thursday, and you know, they would just come and randomly hand their stuff in any time, any day, you know, just go up there and hand your mix in. So then we finally said, okay, we got to meet, because like all these, like, you know, because the station was getting really big,
Yeah.
you know.
They had to move it. I think it wasn't at 600 North Michigan, because they had to move it to Wabash and they had to create its own studio
Well, back then it was still,
on Michigan.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the 80s, yeah. So, and I tell this story all the time, because we really didn't have no idea how big the show was getting, you know. And they finally threw a party open to the public at Columbia College at 600 South, you know, the 600 building. And they opened it up to the public, and we all mixed, and then they were giving away records and T-shirts and bumper stickers and all, you know, at the party, and da 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 da. So okay, we had the party. That was Friday night. So Monday I go to school, and there was a lot of people that just came up to me. They said, "Hey, we didn't see you at the. We couldn't get you. We didn't see you at the party Friday. So, can you sign my record? Can you sign my shirt? Can you sign my?" I'm like, "What the heck?" And then everybody at school, and I'm embarrassed. I'm like, everybody's kind of like, "Who the heck is this guy?" And I'm signing. And then I'm like, so then it was like, holy cow, I didn't.
You get special treatment from the teachers or anything like that?
No.
Did they pass you like, hey, you get an
Automatic A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
English department said, hey, you get an A. Just use the correct English.
It was funny because a lot of the I went to Wells. It was hardcore. A lot of the gang. And we all grew up in tough neighborhoods and all of that. And they always would associate you with some gang or another. And I was like, I'm not a part of that. I'm not a part of that. And they would still mess with me no matter what. But when that happened, and like all these gangbangers at the school were like, we listen to you.
That's you, bro? That's you,
That's
bro?
you. We listen to you on the radio every Friday. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. We're so sorry. We're so sorry for messing with you. And I was like, oh my God.
But I think that's a lot of
what a
stories that come from like the DJs that grew up in the neighborhoods. Because a lot of stories that I've encountered since we've been doing Latinos in the House and we did the conference and talking to a lot of the DJs, and even you, Pablo, it kind of saved your life, by DJing.
Yeah.
But it's just so many. It's amazing how I hear the same stories. Like, yeah, the gangs wouldn't mess with me because I was the DJ, and if I was going to be DJing their party, then they wouldn't mess with me. So I stood safe. Or if somebody tried to mess with me, then it's basically what saved your life. I know.
Yeah.
Like an insurance policy.
Yeah, like really, it is, and it's amazing how you hear these stories, and the first thing they say is, growing up in the hood, it's what saved my life from the gang life, but it's also what saved my life in general from just going from this street to that street because they're like, hey, you're that person that I heard on the radio, or I got your mix, or things like that. So I think growing up in that 80s era was like huge, and it was impactful.
Yeah.
And not only in the neighborhood, but you were able to go to other neighborhoods, without
Being hassled.
Being hassled. It's like, hey, leave him alone.
That's
Yeah.
Steve. That's
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah.
That's Steve from
So
CRX.
it was a big relief. It was huge.
So what
It
happens? What happens after CRX? How long were you there?
So I was kind of there. It went into the late 80s. So I was there, I think 80, 88, 89. But before that happened, I was already starting to do guest mixes for
'Cause you were
BMX.
in CYC, I saw in your bio.
CYC came a little bit later. Well, yeah, CYC. I was doing WKKC, Kennedy King College. I was giving them guest mixes. It was hard because it was, there was a point sometimes where I was doing 5 radio stations at once. Not every week, but I was, doing guest mixes for everybody. And then when I I didn't really leave CRX, but then I was so busy, and they're like, don't worry about it. Because they were pushing me to get, to the BMX and to the GCI, and, the commercial radio stations. And so they were like, yeah, just do that. Because, after the cassettes came the reel-to-reels, and then it was so expensive, right? To own
reel-to-reel.
Yeah, reel-to-reels were something.
No. So we used to go to we used to go to CRX after the cassettes ended, and we started doing our mix. Everybody used to go to the radio station to do their mixes there because they knew we were kids. We're not buying reel-to-reels. So we used to do them there. And then when I started doing the mixes for like BMX, Farley was the one who really helped me out a lot. And we always did parties together and stuff. And I was mixing a lot with the Hot Mix 5 even back then because the Hot Mix 5 used to get hired a lot and they used to take their equipment out. Mm-hmm. So they would, I would do like a Holy Family with Ralphie and Kenny, and there was their equipment, and we were all hired. So I would go mix on their equipment, for whatever parties and stuff like that. But so the CRX used to say, "Oh, we'll give you, use the reels, send them to BMX because they wanted reel to reel mixes. They didn't know cassettes weren't happening. So they were really nice about like, hey, use the equipment, come in here, do your BMX mixes, until I finally bought my own reel to reel and I was able to do everything at home. But it was a really, actually, I can't speak for CYC. Pablo, you could probably speak better on CYC, but, and I'm not saying in any negative way.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, here we go.
All
Here
right,
we go.
man. I'm ready.
No, no,
my
no.
sleeves, buddy. Let's go.
No. Even, but I think CRX. I mean, I don't know what the situation was. Is what I'm saying. But all I know is what I know back then, and I know CRX was really giving BMX competition back then a lot, and they were kind of like, hey,
Right. I
what's
think
going on?
the same thing like CYC. Like Saturdays belong to BMX, Saturday Night Live, and then Fridays belong to like us, the other radio stations
Yeah,
like
CYC,
CRX,
yeah.
and the others.
And the problem too was
The frequency.
the frequency. It was hard to get.
As long as you wrap yourself around with enough aluminum paper, you can
Yeah.
catch us anywhere.
That too.
Catch us anywhere.
Wire coat hangers in the
Right.
antenna, and
Yes, right.
rabbit ears. Yeah,
So
those
it
were
was-
some good
it
times.
Was, yeah, it was a little bit of.
Oh, I see you,
competition.
Victor. Thank you. Victor wishes us congratulations on
Right.
our first pod. I know it only took how
An
long? Like an hour and a half. So we're going into radio stations. I read quite a few things about you, and just even to refresh my memory today. So you had some spots on GCI, KKC, B96, which
B96 came later. Yeah.
which was my probably time at that time. CYC.
CYC. I became part of CYC actually I was just talking to Pablo about that earlier. That was probably early 90s,
90s, yeah.
91, 92, I think in those years. Gino was on the air and he wanted to do a new team and he called me and said, I want you to be a part of CYC. And I'm like, yeah, So I started doing mixes for CYC on a regular basis every week. I don't know, that lasted a year, maybe 2 years.
Okay.
Because then in 93, I know I started, I wanted to get my studio going and start production in 93. And then I cut everything off when I did that. I was like, I want to focus on this. A friend of mine had a studio. I mean, not a big expensive
bedroom.
studio, but it was nice. He had a board and the whole thing, and I ended up buying the equipment off of him and started learning how to produce music.
When did you produce your first track, and what was it called?
Boy, get it straight. It was Andre Lopez put that out. Put it
Okay.
out on Hot Jam. Andre,
Wait, that was the name of it?
yeah.
Oh, I thought you were
Well, it
telling
was an EP. It was not a. It was different
A track?
tracks. Yeah, it was like
Okay.
4 tracks.
Boy, Get It
4-track
Straight?
EP. That was the big track
Okay.
on the EP. So I took it into Hot Jams one day, and he's like, "Hey, what are you working on?" And I said, "I'm working on, And then I had cassettes, and he's like, "Bring it in," and he played it in the record store, and I'm like, he's like, "Nobody wants this," and I'm like, "No," So he decided, and he's been talking to me at that time about putting Hot Jam Records back out again.
Okay.
And so he's like, "I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna start with your record." And so he ended up putting out my first EP in '96. That
Was
in
it a house
96.
music or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Your
So
first EP, what was it named? What
Well, it
the name of
wasn't.
your
It was just different tracks. On the boy Get It Straight was the bigger track that everybody played.
Even the
on
radio, commercial guys too?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, it was getting played all over. Well, it was B96 era back at that time. So yeah, that's where all that came about, and I stopped doing radio and all of that just to learn. It's a lot of work to learn. Took me 3 years just to get something out, but you got I listened to the stuff that I did back then, and I'm like, oh, that's horrible.
Hey, but at that time, you really didn't know I mean, everybody was kind of getting into it. I mean, I think even Jesse Saunders even says when sometimes that he knew what the quality of his first track was, wasn't the best, but it was the 1st one out there, and I think that's a lot for a lot of the records that are out there because
Yeah.
you're talking about people who were just playing with either instruments or things that they found at a secondhand store that made some beats, and that's where the creations started flowing. So
Yeah, everyone was
I-
like learning on the spot
yeah.
type
Right.
of deal, and that's what also made it very unique.
There was no YouTube back
Yeah.
then. There was no,
Right.
I'm going to
Tutorial.
play this, I'm
Oh,
going to turn this, I'm going to put this up and see what it happens.
And I went into the studio in the '80s with Marshall Jefferson and Mike Don and their studio back then, Bam Bam, and it just didn't work out. I didn't want to put something out that I was gonna be like, man. So, and then I also went to Rick Seapack on Soundpack Records.
Okay, yeah.
I went with him and we worked on some stuff, and it
Ever
just
released it?
No,
Soundpack?
no. I didn't feel that it was good enough at the time. I'm like, I just didn't want to put something out to put it out, you know. So I kind of just backed off, and I said, and I really wanted to learn production, so. And I was so busy too, and I just didn't. I never kept on pursuing it back then, because of course we were doing a bunch of the clubs and all of that.
So let me
And-
ask you this. I'm sorry. As you were like getting to basically know yourself as a DJ and getting yourself to know as basically, I mean, I consider anybody who puts any type of music out an artist because it takes creativity to figure out how you're going to do that and to put sounds together to make something sound really well. Who were your influence? I mean, outside of Joe Cool Rodriguez, what other DJs were your influences? Who did you gravitate to quite a bit to continue to learn your craft and say maybe there was more of a mentor? I know you said Farley. Was there anybody else?
Farley, Ralphie Rosario. Well, at the time, like I said, I was mixing with a lot of them, and I think Farley the most, more so. You're talking about just DJ, not production.
Well, DJ, production. I mean, because
production's always been like in the back burner, at that time, and so yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, and all the other guys who actually like Vince and all these guys, I mean, they were a big influence on me too, because that's where I actually saw it happening, and I learned from them. So of course, and like I said, Hot Mix 5 came. I think they started in '82. Hot Mix 5 came on the air,
yeah, I think so.
and we came a year later, and then it just kind of blew up, and everything was crazy. I mean, I think Pablo could agree with me. We were we were young kids, and
Yeah,
we had to grow up really fast.
Yeah.
I mean, we're dealing with
We were
club
14,
owners.
15-year-olds, but I didn't feel like a 14 or 15-year-old.
Yeah.
You still don't.
We were dealing with a lot of grown-up situations, and club owners
Yeah.
were calling, and and I remember, just as an example, the owner of AKA's called me and said, hey, we want to book you to play at
Oh,
at the
AKA
club.
up north, way up north.
Yeah.
Right.
And, okay, da-da-da. We set it all up. The next day he calls me back and says, I didn't know you were 16 years old. He goes, you can't play in the club. And I'm like, okay,
Bummer.
Yeah.
But then the next day, after that, he calls me back. He goes, I gotta have you in the club. And I'm like, okay. So he's like, here's the deal. You come in 10 minutes before you're gonna mix. You go straight to the DJ booth with your records. We'll have your money like 10 minutes before your hour's up. And as soon as you're done, you get out.
Pa' fuera.
That was it. So that's pretty much how it worked, probably for a bunch
Oh,
of
I had to take
bunch
my
of
mom.
us. What?
I had to take my mom.
Oh, he did say that. I
Yeah.
remember you saying that. Really?
Yeah, but she liked it. She got got a chance
Oh,
to get out of the
wow.
house. So, but that's a good example. We did whatever we had to do
Yeah.
to get the exposure.
And it was like I said, it was like we had to grow up so fast, and the responsibility of doing, being on the radio and getting mixes done, and then back then, not only that, I used to have to send out my playlists to all the record labels, and I started getting service through all the major labels when I was on all the radio stations, and I used to have to write down all the music I played and all the records and the titles and
Yeah,
the
to rate
labels,
rate them.
and mail them all out, and that's how I got service through a lot of the major label record labels.
I know Joe Cool had like posted almost like a table placemat that had like all the things going on within that week, including like a list of the music that a lot of these clubs were playing or what was hot at that time, from 1 to 20 or the top 20. So it's crazy because even Kenny Jason, he's got his playlists and stuff like that. And they're cool to look at because you don't see that now. I mean, well, you see playlists if they show up on a USB or things like that. But I think going back into that time and seeing those flyers and how different DJs were promoting the music that people weren't really paying attention to at the time, post disco. I think that's how I think a lot of the Italio disco got played by you guys, and then anything that was coming over overseas through your record pools.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because, the Joe was in like a lot of the clubs, I mean, a resident. I was never I never wanted to be a resident DJ in a club.
Never?
I was asked so many times, and I'm like, no.
Why is that? I'm curious.
I enjoyed going everywhere, and it was more money, it was it had gigs, 2-3 gigs a night, and I didn't want to be stuck in one place, and or the mobile parties. Right? We did a lot of weddings and cotillions and all that, and the money didn't make sense to be in the club. But what you're saying too about the records, about the list of that the resident DJs used to do that too, to get product from the major labels and stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up was when I started playing there was no genres back then.
This is dance music.
It was just music.
Yeah.
Like when I played, Stevie B, that was not considered. Stevie B wasn't considered freestyle at the time, and a lot of the stuff that I would play, I would be like, who categorized, right? Like who did all that? Who separated and said this is this is that?
Well, yeah, because it was just popular radio. Like B96 didn't say, "Hey, this is the new freestyle artist."
Right.
They just said it's Stevie B.
So when we were coming up, it was just a popular song, and if you liked it, you played it. You know what I mean? And so, it's like, so now if I do, like today, if I do a mix and I could play a mix of maybe even alternative, but to me back then that wasn't alternative, right? It was
just music.
It was just,
It's a good ass song.
Yeah, it was a good song. It was music,
Which, I mean, that's okay. I mean, but, everybody says, oh, you were playing this, you were playing that. And I was like, well, to me, that wasn't that back then. It was just a song that came out. It was a good song, And then I started thinking about it later. And I'm like, well, who put all these songs in categories? I mean, what would you? Let me just ask you this, because I know you're a DJ.
Because I'm old ass DJ too. Okay.
I just
Got
one.
no shame.
I'm just gonna ask you one, like visual. The music's got me. What?
To me, that would have been like R&B.
But I mean,
Funk. That was
now.
funk. Now?
Now what is?
Now it's
who
new
says
disco.
it's-
It's new disco. I don't know. It might be.
Is that
I'm sure there's a
what it's
remix of
categorized
that song. Well, other classes, there's remixes, but I think that would be considered new disco now.
Right.
What do you think?
I really don't. I don't like to categorize music now. That's what I'm saying. I'm kind of like, that was a jam back then, and I played it, and that's what
I
it
think
is.
before 1984 and back, that was the thing where there was, as long as it was hot,
Right.
it didn't matter. But now, there's a divide.
Well, I mean, I mean, you figure if you look back at the Grammys, there wasn't that many categories. There wasn't like a dance category. It just went into R&B or pop. Those are the two categories that gave it next to country. That was it, and rock and roll. That was four categories back in those times when the Grammys first started. And now you've got so many different categories and so many different genres of music. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I could have sworn that I read that they discontinued or renamed the dance category, like the dance house category, whatever it was. Somebody go on there and correct me, but I could have sworn I saw that. I think when Maurice posted it. So now there's a new category that the Grammys have evolved around to, I think, include more type of songs and music for that dance category.
I think it's just gotten out of control, honestly.
I got to agree.
Yeah,
I got to
right,
agree.
right.
Why can't music just be music? You know, and even now,
Sorry.
the argument of, you know, house music and who started it, who didn't, who was a part of it, you weren't a part of it. I think Pablo, you can attest that when we started this whole entire idea of Latinos in the house and the stories we were hearing, even from you and I talked for 3 days straight for 4 or 5 hours.
Non-stop.
Me and Steve talked for almost 4.5 hours on one given night. But in listening to all of these things and coming up with it, it amazes me how everybody can still sit there and say, you know, it wasn't called this. When was it called? And when did the first name house drop on a record? And it's become such an argument now and such a fight,
I don't
even on
even get into
Facebook.
it.
I don't even get
It's
myself involved in
almost
that.
like I'll just sit there and just watch all the text messages coming up. What I do miss is Benji putting people in their place.
Yeah.
I miss him so much because the entertaining part about Benji is he would post a record and tell you the history on it, and then like 1,500 comments would come up and be like, no, it was this way, no, it was this way, and you know, Benji would be sitting there posting receipts. No, this is where it started. Here, this is what I'm showing
and
you,
for those
and
who
things
don't
of
know
that
who
nature.
Benji is, Benji was from DJ International.
Yes,
Right?
yes,
Benji
he was from
Espinosa.
DJ. Yep. So
But I'm more interested now to say who categorized all this stuff. That's who I want to know.
I think we need to find the
house-
history on that.
House thing,
Who's going to be the first one to claim they categorized it? I'm the
but
first.
I mean, you know, it's just what it is. Because I still just play what I like to play. I don't, you know, people say, oh, you threw in, you know, you're mixing alternative with
freestyle.
house and freestyle or whatever. and-
You missed the kid from 242 with
and it's
Cynthia. What's wrong with you?
I mean, you know, it's like, hey, I'm just doing a mix.
Yeah.
You know, I don't.
Do you have favorite DJs now? Now with this new genre of music and new DJs coming out, do you have any?
No.
Ooh,
I
really?
don't. I don't.
No one excites you? Like,
Yeah, no one excites you like saying, "Hey, I
You
like
know,
listening to
there's
him."
a lot of music. I mean, you're talking about the newer DJs that
Yeah,
are out
yeah.
today. I mean, there's good DJs out there. I don't.
Dave Guetta, one of those European
new,
guys.
the newer stuff, I really don't like.
Not even an
Honestly?
Idris Elba? What? No, just kidding.
I just can't get into it. I'm sorry. I don't know. You know,
But
I
I
like
mean,
new music, but not certain categories. I don't know. I just I can't get into the new stuff. Some of it is good. I mean, not the new stuff, but the newer DJs that are out there. You know, I listen more to the music than, you know. There's a lot of DJs that hit the sync button. I don't even know if they're.
I was just
they're
about to
mixing.
ask you about the sync button. How did you?
Mixing or
You were
not.
reading my mind. I was about to ask you about the sync button. How do you feel about the sync button?
Are you sync or anti-sync?
I'm anti-sync.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not a.
That's not even a challenge, right? It's not even
no,
a thing.
Not a sync button. No.
I like watching the DJs that don't have cords attached to their equipment and they're DJing. I like those DJs.
The ones that
Very sarcastically, I say that.
They just dance.
Yeah, they just dance and
Move
they're
all
just
these
moving.
knobs that you
Yeah,
really don't
move-
have to move all these knobs. I mean, the music
Like
nowadays.
they move the power button and they don't even know to press it. I swear to God, it's hilarious. So
So you'll be one day. I can see you dancing like that one day, maybe.
yeah, you're gonna be dancing like this and
Pumping
you're
my
gonna be
fist.
yeah,
Yeah.
pumping your fist,
And
doing a Pauly
on
D
his
there.
I won't be able to lift my arm up too much. No.
If you had to go
It's-
back in one period of your life throughout your DJ career to now, where would you go back and what would you correct?
Oof.
Great question.
I come up with them sometimes.
I think I would love to go back to the 80s. I would love to go back to the 80s. And I think I would correct my attitude.
Really?
I think everybody, right? Pablo can agree.
Yeah,
We all had
little cockiness.
animosity towards each other, and it was not just us. I mean, it was everybody. It was throughout the whole industry. But everybody had that. Everybody wanted to play. Everybody wanted to play the new record first, right? Everybody
Yeah, and that's
wanted to play that new
You're right. They wanted
club first.
Yeah.
They wanted to be the one to find that new little hideaway place that nobody ever played at before, and I played there. I played that record
I played this first. I discovered it.
and that's where a lot of that came from, right?
Yeah.
I think so, right? And everybody was like, "Oh, Steve's gonna be
Did
here."
you black out your record so no one can see the title?
No.
Oh my God, do I see a lot of those, especially now at the secondhand stores. I find a lot of
Oh, this must be
12
good
inch.
because they blacked it out.
yeah, because they black it
even
out, and
know
I'm
what
just
the
like,
damn
my
song
God, was
is.
that a serious thing? Now I know why I've got 12 inches that are blacked out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this must be a test press. That was stupid me back in the younger days, but now I know it was just no, they blacked it out because they didn't want you to
was
know what
good.
they were playing.
Well, the thing is, everybody could talk about everybody else, and to me, I like to be honest, and I was probably, I was doing it too. I'm not gonna sit there and say, oh, they were this and they did that, and it was everybody, and I take responsibility for my actions too at that time, and it wasn't bad, right? I mean, it wasn't to the point where it was just the way it was. It was competition. Everybody,
I think me and you are two good examples because you were on CRX. I was on CYC. We were like rival stations, and here we are, fucking 40 years later.
Yeah, to talk
Yeah,
about
and
it.
That's great.
I think a lot of people have to learn from that because, drop all the crap and the BS. I mean, the past was the past and it's over. We were kids back then. We didn't, believe it or not, we could say, we didn't even know any better, right? Because we got all these things happening. We're growing up at double time. We're dealing with all these people. We're dealing with all these club owners, with all these situations that are happening, and then, arguing with them, and everybody's, against this and that.
But it's funny though that you say that because now with TikTok, there's a lot of DJs that are on there. A lot of DJs are very humble, and then you've got these DJs who just sit there and block people all day because I didn't like what you said, or you're related to someone else, or you have an affiliation. It's ridiculous now that you would think that they were in a club and all they're on is on TikTok. And they're fighting with each other. And I'm sitting here looking at this. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Can there just be a peace amongst DJs? Everybody has a talent.
Yeah.
Everybody has an ear to listen to different music and everything else. And I'll give you the prime example, Victor Salazar. I love him. He's such a humble man. And there's so many humble DJs out there, but he plays every genre of music and he appreciates everybody no matter what.
Yeah.
He does not want to have a beef with you. He doesn't care whether or not you did something in the past, or he just wants to play the music, be the DJ for TikTok, for a club, for a wedding, whatever. And I think that's the part that I think a lot of us have to learn to deal with is squash the beefs.
Yeah.
We're grown. We're in our 50s. Some of are in their 60s. There is no reason to have any of these beefs. We were young back then, If I stepped on your toe, Pablo, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I stepped on your toe. And if I smacked you in the back of the head, Steve, I'm sorry I did that. I must have been drunk.
No, I
Those
heard,
kind of moments.
I heard you throw punch people.
Yeah, I do throw punch people. There,
And I-
you
and
sold
I-
me a T-shirt.
And I just want to go back. I just want to go back to what you were asking me about, because I'm not throwing any of these guys under the bus for playing stuff that they like to play. Don't get me wrong. Just because I'm not a fan of it doesn't mean that it's
No,
you know.
that it-
No,
I'm
like you
not-
said, there's a lot of great music out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there is.
oh
A lot
yeah.
of great.
There's tons of.
I think
there's
there's
tons
but
of
there's
great
too
music.
much that it's hard to catch up or.
It's a lot of
Follow,
there's a
you
lot
know.
of garbage out there,
And that too.
And there's a lot of garbage because now everybody's producing.
Or they're
and
doing
everybody- They're
mashups.
just throwing, throwing stuff out. When I was doing production for whatever labels that were, they said you don't come to me with 1 or 2 tracks. You got to come to me with 10 or 15 projects. Then you say I'm ready to see you. So that's what I had to do for every record label that I was shopping my stuff to. So it wasn't just 1 or 2 tracks and then you take it to them. Okay, what is that? A 10-minute, 5-minute meeting? Okay, we didn't like those 2. What else you got? No, bring us 10, 15. Let's sit down for an hour, listen to what you got, and let us pick and choose from what we like or don't like. And that's how. So you had to really get in there and produce all kinds of different, tracks and songs or whatever it is that you wanted to do. This is the one and I wanted to ask Pablo this because because a lot of and I'm not going to mention any names, but a lot of the guys before used to say that Steve was on the radio, but everybody had the chance to be on the radio. And I don't understand. I know it was a lot of work. It was a lot of responsibility. I've gotten DJs on CRX, and they didn't last a month. And I told them, don't take the responsibility if you can't do it. You can't. You gotta hand in a mix every single week.
Being a radio DJ, and I've been doing that since I was 14. It's a commitment.
Yeah, a big commitment, huge.
It's a big commitment.
It's a
and not too many
sacrifice.
guys. And you also have to be really creative to come up with a new mix every week.
Right.
That takes up a lot of brain power.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do that. Someone can probably do a great mix.
But,
But not every week.
But do you understand what I'm like? I just like a lot of the guys today say. I mean, even back then they would say, "Oh, well, he's on the radio. He's on the radio," and it's like you guys had the same chance of getting on the
Yeah.
radio as everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, why are you putting that like almost saying that I did something wrong or how
You
come-
went for what you wanted, right? And that's how in anything in life, when you want something really bad, you're gonna go for it.
Yeah, you are. But you're going to work for it.
You're gonna
and I
work
think
for it, right? It's not gonna be like, hey, like,
it's not going to be handed to
no,
you.
not all the. Sometimes once in a great millennia, maybe, right? But no, normally you gotta go for it.
And I think because, it happened like within, 3 years of me actually starting. I think just getting on the radio was just, to me, that was the thing, right? So I didn't really, all the hall parties and everything else came later, after.
After
So
radio,
I was
right.
more first a radio DJ
Right.
more than anything else. And then as the radio station grew and got more popularity and all that, then my name grew also with that. And then that's when I started getting more of the clubs, more of the hall parties, stuff like that, But I was always more of a radio DJ than anything else,
Do you consider yourself a legend?
I guess. I mean, yeah. Yeah, I sure
And
do.
I
Yeah.
do. I consider you a legend.
Yeah.
And to me, because people are throwing that word out, nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because you mixed for 100 years. It's because of what you contributed
Right.
to this madness, DJ madness.
I'm glad you led into that. Do you feel Latinos contributed into the dance and house music scene? Do you feel we had a place in that history?
Yes. I mean, a lot of us,
did not get the exposure and get the recognition that we
Deserve.
deserve. You know, everybody wants to be, like I said, everybody wanted to be on top. Everybody wanted to be this. Everybody wanted to be that. But in the end term of it all, we were all making something happen.
Yeah.
Right? And we didn't really know it at
No,
the time.
we were part of something without being known we were part of something.
Right.
It wasn't just one person. You know, it was a
They're
whole-
saying we need to go and speak louder into the mic, closer to the mic.
How about now?
Testing 1, 2.
But I think Latinos in the House brought that to the forefront, right? Because now, and not taking anything away from anybody else or the commercial DJs or anything like that, you know. I never was a regular on commercial DJ. I mean, commercial radio. I always did guest mixes. Always, it was guest mix for BMX, GCI, you know, BMX, whatever. And I never was a regular on any of the commercial stations, but I was on there enough,
For everybody to know who you
to
were.
be recognized.
right? You know, and so I think, well, not only myself, but you know, everyone else. Like you're bringing that, like I said, to the forefront, and recognizing people that really do have the stories to tell, and nobody's hearing it. Nobody understands Pablo because, oh, I heard his name, or even myself, or you know, any one of us. But you know, that is a significant part of the music industry, because everybody has their own different way of
Listening to that music.
playing, mixing, whatever music you're playing, you know. And I think contributing to Latinos in the House gives everybody a chance to voice their, you know, talents and their stories of how, you know, it was not just, and I'm not gonna, you know, keep, you know, it's not just the Hot Mix 5. It's not just, you know, the Chosen Few. It's not just, you know, all these different groups. There's all of us too that came up around all that too. And we all just seem to be kind of shoved to the side and not spoken about.
But not no more.
That's right.
Not
We're
no
gonna
more.
be-
Not no more.
We're gonna raise
I will
our
make
voices,
sure that
be
and
heard.
I will make sure that everybody's voice is heard as best as I can. You know, at the end of the day, I consider you a legend.
Yeah.
And learning your history, learning about you. I remember when I first put the question out there, who was your number one DJ? And quite a few people put on you, Steve. They said it was you. And I was like, I don't remember Steve Spinnin Santoyo. But again, like you said, that doesn't mean you didn't exist. It just means that I wasn't listening to you in particular, or it wasn't something that I was hearing. I remember Pablo. I remember Gino. I remember a couple of DJs here and there. But I was more like always going into the local halls and stuff like that, listening to the local DJs, you know, and listening to them from the party crews. So I don't think necessarily it doesn't mean that our history doesn't exist. It just means that people didn't listen to certain DJs because they gravitated to certain other DJs.
Right.
You know, there might be DJs that did the parties back in the day at St. Agnes that don't do DJing anymore, but they remember their mixes and they have their cassette tapes. I still have my cassette tapes from CYC. I know quite a few people who do. And I know a lot of people who have them from CRX. I still have mine from CRX, you know, but it does not mean that we did not exist. It does not mean we were not a part of that era before it was called house music, before it was called disco or any of that. We had some type of space there. I think it's just a matter, again, of knowing the history. The Chosen Few have put their history out there consistently and
Right.
always. And to me, there's always different versions of their history. But for
And there's
some
nothing
parts,
wrong with that.
no, it's not.
No.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
And if anything, I remember the movie Maestro. I'm very, very gravitated toward that movie. One, because it was the first time that Benji got recognized in a motion picture for that documentary of how disco started and, you know, how Larry Levin and Frankie got to know each other. And it told a large history. It might have been slow moving, but it told a history because you brought Benji into the mix. And even at that time, Benji was still a part of that. But he had only a glimmer of that. And then as you go along, people mention his name, but now that he's gone, there's no one to interview and get that history as much as he went with when he passed away. The same thing with JJ, his brother, being the manager at the warehouse. People knew him, some people didn't. But that doesn't mean he wasn't a part of the warehouse.
Right.
And he should have been a part, his name should have been a part of the warehouse when they did that dedication as well. It may not have been on Jefferson Avenue, but he should have been recognized. Somebody should have been able to represent that JJ Flores also had a part of that as well. And that's why this is now named Don't Count Us Out.
Yeah.
Do not count us out. Do not dismiss us. Allow us to be a part of it. Ask us. If you don't know, ask what part of the history that we had in there. And we can all work together and become that one togetherness that we need to in this type of music. I know he's signaling us for 2
Yeah.
minutes.
Okay.
So
I want to thank you. I really do for doing this. I think it's great. Pablo, thank you for interviewing.
No, thank you for showing up on time.
Yeah, and being patient because of
yeah.
all the technical difficulties.
But also, I have to thank my cousins, my cousin Danny, my friend Kiko, Fidel. They were my roadies. They went and helped me carry the equipment. All those years, we had so much fun. My family, of course, all my cousins, everybody who supported me. My wife, my kids for putting up for the boom, 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 boom for years, and still putting up with it. And everybody in the industry. I mean, again, Farley and everybody who helped me get there in some certain way. It was a pleasure to actually, even though, again, we were kind of growing and didn't really realize that, everybody kind of had our hands and guided us through, our way in a certain way, one way or the other, right? Mm-hmm. And that's great, that happened. And I think everybody needs to be more humble and think about all the people that actually got them to where they are today, And if we have more of that, we could, stop all the crap that's going on, because there's still a lot of stuff that's happening.
Steve, I want to
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for-
you, Steve.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for your contributions from the 80s till now. Thank you for being a legend. Thank you for putting us in the forefront during the CRX days, because I do remember that. Even to Pablo, I mean, just thank you. Thank you both for being who you are and what you contribute to this music and Chicago, in Chicago, because that is huge, to let you guys know how much Chicago really appreciates you and what you guys have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, for coming
Appreciate
out.
it.
Thank you, everybody. We got through our first one. I'm so excited. Tune in, not next week, but the week after. We'll be doing this every 2 weeks. And we will see you
Soon.
soon.
And before still on?
We still
Okay,
at?
so before, we wanted to just make everyone aware, the next conference, it's happening September
13th.
at Distro Hall in Berwyn, Illinois. So be looking out for that. More information.
Yes, we'll have
coming
more
soon.
info. Thanks, Pablo. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you, everybody.
Thank you,
and
Danielle.
have a good night.
All right. What?
Hold on. We're still on.
That was fast.
We're still on.
We're done, right?
Go ahead.
Oh.
Oh.
Hey, everybody, there is one thing we did forget. Thank you to Javier LeBron for Xavier's Bar and Kitchen. If you guys have not come through here, make sure you guys come through here. I believe today's ladies' night for Thursday nights. DJ Lex is here. But Javier, thank you, BFF, for letting us use your establishment. And now, have a good night.
Thank you.